Every woman fears hearing these words from a married man. Have you ever felt that tightness in your chest when it takes a long time to respond? That lump in your throat when you realize that something has changed, but you can't identify what? There is a phrase that every married man eventually needs to say when he is living a double life. A sentence that marks the end of illusion and the beginning of the naked truth. The most disturbing? Most women have felt this phrase coming but chose not to see it. That strange silence. Those excuses that don't make sense. That feeling that you are being prepared for something inevitable. Do you know what that phrase is? More importantly, would you know how to recognize the signs before it appears? Because when it is finally said, it is already too late, the game is over, and you didn't even know you were playing. In this video, we'll dive into the words that no woman wants to hear and the behaviors that precede them. Get ready, because what you discover can completely change the way you see your relationships. 1. I need to tell you something. When these words come out of his mouth, the world seems to stop for a moment. The tone of voice changes. The gaze averts. There's a gravity in the air that you can physically feel. This phrase is never accompanied by good news. It is the prelude to a revelation that will shake the foundations of what you believe to be true. The married man who is living a double life knows exactly the weight of these words. He mentally rehearsed dozens of times. He chose the moment, the place, even the way he would look at you when he said them. Because he knows that after that sentence, nothing will be the same as before. It is the point of no return. What makes this sentence so devastating is not just the content of what comes after. It is the sudden awareness that everything you have experienced up to that moment may have been a lie. Every promise, every future plan, every word of love, everything becomes questionable. The phrase works like a time bomb that he himself programmed and now needs to deliver to you. He chooses a specific moment to utter these words. It's never random. It usually happens when the situation is about to get out of his control, when the wife is too suspicious, when you started asking inconvenient questions, when he realizes that he can no longer keep the two realities separate. The phrase comes as a desperate attempt to control the narrative before you find out by other means. What comes after these words is rarely the complete truth. It's an edited version, carefully constructed to minimize damage to his image. He'll tell you just enough to seem honest, but never everything. Because if you really knew everything, all the lies, all the manipulations, all the moments when he consciously chose to deceive you, it would be impossible to maintain any kind of control over the situation. The pause he makes after saying these words is not accidental. It is calculated. He's watching your reaction, measuring how far he can go, deciding how much of the truth he can reveal without completely destroying the possibility of keeping you around. Because even in this moment of supposed honesty, he is still playing. It's still manipulating. He is still trying to get out of this situation in the best possible way for him. When you hear these words, something inside you already knows what is coming. You may not know the exact details, but your instinct recognizes the danger. That's why the heart races, the hands sweat, and a feeling of nausea takes over. Your body is preparing you for the emotional impact you're about to take. 2. The silence that precedes the storm. Before the devastating words arrive, there is a period of disturbing silence. It is not the comfortable silence of those who are at ease in the presence of the other. It is that charged, tense silence that seems to occupy all the space between you. He looks at his phone more often. The answers become monosyllabic. Conversations that once flowed naturally now feel forced and shallow. This silence is the physical manifestation of the guilt and internal conflict that he is experiencing. Part of him wants to remain in the comfort zone of lying. Another part knows that the situation is unsustainable, and while he doesn't decide what to do, silence takes over. Each encounter becomes heavier. Each farewell seems to carry an extra weight. What makes this silence even more cruel is that it makes you question your own perception. You feel that something is wrong, but when you ask, he denies it. He says that everything is fine, that it is stress from work, that it is tiredness, and you want to believe it. Because the alternative is to face a truth that will hurt too much. Then you swallow the discomfort and try to normalize what is clearly not normal. During this time, He is distancing himself emotionally. It's not necessarily conscious, but it happens. The demonstrations of affection decrease. Future plans disappear from the conversations. He stops doing those little things he used to do. And when you point out these changes, he minimizes it, saying that you are exaggerating or being insecure. Silence also serves a strategic purpose. He is creating space between you, making it easier for him to separate from what he knows is coming. It's as if he's building a wall brick by brick, and each day of silence adds another layer. By the time the moment of revelation finally comes, he will have created enough distance to make the breakup less painful for him. You try to fill that silence in every way possible. Send more frequent messages. Try to start conversations about the relationship. It suggests walks, meetings, anything to break down this invisible barrier that has erected between you. But nothing works because the problem is not the lack of communication. The problem is that he already knows what he needs to tell you and is just procrastinating on the inevitable. This period of silence can last for days, weeks, or even months. Each person has their own time to gather courage or to be forced by circumstances to finally speak out. But one thing is certain: the longer this silence is, the more painful the revelation will be when it finally comes. If you want to understand why those words hurt so deeply and how to free yourself from that emotional attachment, discover the Jung method. Link pinned in the first comment. 3. I can't go on like this anymore. This phrase carries layers of meaning that go far beyond the words themselves. When he says this, he is declaring that the current situation has become untenable for him. Note well, for him, not for you, not for the relationship, but for the comfort and convenience of it. It's a fundamentally self-serving statement, masquerading as emotional honesty. What he's really saying is that maintaining two parallel lives has become too tiring. The lies are piling up. It becomes increasingly difficult to remember what I said to each person. The risks of being discovered have increased. The energy needed to maintain the charade became greater than the benefits he derived from the situation. Then he decides that something needs to change. This phrase is usually accompanied by a speech about how he is confused, how he needs time to think, how he doesn't want to hurt anyone. He places himself as a victim of circumstances, as if he had fallen into a complicated situation without having consciously chosen to be there. But the truth is that every step that led him to this point was a deliberate decision. Each lie was a choice. Each hidden encounter was intentional. The timing of his choosing to say those words rarely coincides with when the situation has really become untenable. The situation was probably untenable for a long time. He's only saying it now because something has changed. Perhaps the wife began to be seriously suspicious. Maybe you've started pushing for more commitment. Maybe he met someone else. Whatever the reason, this phrase comes when he realizes that he can no longer control all the variables. There is a cruelty embedded in these words. He's essentially saying that the burden of maintaining the relationship with you has become a burden. That being with you is no longer worth the effort required. That he's weighed the pros and cons and decided it's time to end or drastically reduce the emotional investment in that connection. All of this masked in language that sounds almost like a vulnerable confession. When you hear these words, your first reaction may be to try to fix the situation, offer solutions, lower your expectations, make things easier for him, and that's exactly what he wants. That you take some of the responsibility for the impossible situation he created, that you adapt even more, demand even less, accept even more crumbs of attention and commitment. But here's the hard truth. When a married man says he can't go on like this anymore, he's already made a decision. It may be that he still does not have full clarity on the next steps, but the decision to radically change or end the situation has already been made. What comes after that sentence is just the inevitable unfolding of that decision. 4. When he starts to create distance. Distance does not appear suddenly. It settles gradually, like a fog that gradually thickens until you realize that you can no longer see clearly. It starts with small, barely noticeable changes. It takes a little longer to respond to messages. Calls get shorter. The meetings become less frequent. And when asked, he always has a reasonable explanation. Accumulated work, family problems, tiredness. Emotional detachment comes before physical distancing. He is present in the same environment as you, but his mind is elsewhere. That deep connection that existed seems to have evaporated. Conversations lose their substance. You talk about trivialities, about everyday life, but never about anything that really matters. It builds an invisible wall and you feel this barrier without being able to touch it. One of the clearest signs of this distancing is how it stops including you in future plans. Before, he talked about places you could visit together, things you would do, dreams you would share. Now the future has become forbidden territory in your conversations. He speaks only about the immediate present, about the next meeting, about today, as if there was no tomorrow together. It also begins to create unnecessary conflicts. Small arguments about insignificant things become more frequent. He seems to look for reasons to get angry, to question, to create friction. This is not accidental. Unconsciously or not, he's building a narrative where the relationship isn't working, where you're not compatible, where maybe it's better for each of you to go your own way. This narrative serves to justify the distancing that is already happening. The demonstrations of affection practically disappear. Those kind words he used to say become rare or cease altogether. Gestures of care and attention decrease dramatically. He stops asking about your day, about your feelings, about your worries. It's as if you've become a secondary presence in his life, someone who is there but no longer deserves the emotional effort he used to devote to. During this time of estrangement, you may find yourself emotionally juggling, trying to regain his attention. It changes your behavior, your appearance, your way of communicating. Try to be more understanding, less demanding, more available. But none of this works, because the problem is not with you. The problem is that he has already decided, consciously or unconsciously, that he needs to step away, and nothing you do is going to change that. Distancing also serves as psychological preparation for both. For him, it makes it easier to move on when he finally takes the definitive step of wrapping things up. For you, although painful, this period can work as emotional training for the separation that is to come. When it finally happens, it won't be a complete shock because you've been feeling this absence for a while. 5. You deserve someone better. This is perhaps the most cowardly phrase in a married man's arsenal of excuses. It sounds noble, selfless, as if he is thinking about your well-being when he says this. But behind this apparent generosity is one of the best constructed lies. He's not thinking about you, he's thinking about himself. He's looking for a way out that will make him look like a good person while abandoning you. What this phrase really means is that he doesn't want to be with you anymore, but he doesn't have the courage to assume it directly. Then he transfers the responsibility for the separation to a supposed concern for his happiness, as if he was doing himself a favor by walking away, as if he were being heroic by recognizing his own limitations. It is emotional manipulation disguised as maturity. When he says you deserve someone better, he's simultaneously diminishing himself and putting you on a pedestal. But this pedestal is a trap, because by saying that, he makes it virtually impossible for you to fight for the relationship without seeming like you're accepting less than you deserve. If you insist on staying, you send the message that you are content with little. If you accept the separation, you are validating his decision as being for your own good. The greatest cruelty of this phrase is in what it implies about all the time you spent together. If he now recognizes that you always deserved someone better, does that mean that all this time he knew he wasn't enough for you? That you were consciously offering less than you deserved? Or is this just a convenient excuse that has come up now that he wants to get out of the situation? The timing of this phrase is rarely coincidental. It usually appears when his situation has changed in some way. Maybe he decided to invest more in marriage. Maybe you got involved with someone else. Perhaps the pressure to keep the secret has become too great. Whatever the reason, this phrase comes when he needs an outlet that preserves his self-image as a decent man. There is something particularly painful about hearing these words from someone you have chosen to be, who you have accepted with all the limitations and complications. Because when you got into that situation, you knew the challenges. I wasn't looking for perfection. I was choosing that specific person, with all their imperfections and circumstances. And now this person is saying that you should want something different, something better, as if your own choices and feelings are not valid. 6. The excuses that reveal the truth. Every married man who lives a double life develops a repertoire of excuses. They become automatic, fluid, convincing. They have been tested and perfected over time. Each lie told served as a rehearsal for the next. And the more he lies, the more natural the act of lying becomes. The problem is that these excuses, when looked at together, tell a very different story than the one he's trying to sell. The most common excuses revolve around professional commitments, meetings that stretch, last-minute trips, urgent projects that require overtime. They are perfect excuses because they are verifiable only to a certain extent. You can't call his boss to confirm if there really was a meeting. There is no way to know if that project was really so urgent. And he relies on this impossibility of verification to build his lies. Another category of apology involves family obligations, problems with the children, commitments with the wife, household issues that need immediate attention. These excuses are particularly cruel because they use the very people who should be the reason for him not being with you as a justification for the times when he cannot be present. It's an additional layer of betrayal built into every lie. There is also the type of excuse that arises when you question the situation or ask for more commitment. Suddenly, complications appear that did not exist before. His wife became more suspicious. The situation at home is delicate. It's not the right time. He needs more time. These excuses serve to indefinitely push away any concrete change in the situation, keeping you in a perpetual state of waiting. Excuses work because there's a part of you that wants to believe them. Because accepting that they are lies means accepting that you are being deceived, manipulated, used. And that's a very painful truth to face. So you choose to believe, or at least pretend to believe, because the alternative is to destroy the illusion you've built on the relationship. But the excuses eventually begin to contradict each other. He forgets what he said before. The details don't add up. Stories have holes. And when you point out these inconsistencies, more excuses appear to explain the previous excuses. It is a web of lies that becomes more and more complex and fragile, until one day it completely collapses under its own weight. 7. My wife found out. This is the phrase that changes everything instantly. It's no longer about feelings, confusion, or doubts. It is a concrete and immediate crisis. When he says these words, you stop being a choice and become a problem that needs to be solved quickly. The urgency in his voice is not for you. It is for the chaos that is about to settle in his life. At that moment, all the promises made previously evaporate. Those plans to eventually be together officially, those conversations about how he felt trapped in the marriage, that narrative that he was with you because he really wanted to and not just for convenience, all of that disappears. Because now he has to do damage control, and that control rarely includes protecting you or what you had. His reaction when his wife finds out says everything about where you really are in his hierarchy of priorities. If he immediately withdraws, blocks contact, disappears, it is clear that preserving the marriage, or at least the appearance of normalcy, is more important than any consideration for his feelings. You become a chapter that he needs to close as soon as possible to minimize the damage. There is a variation of this phrase that is even worse, when he doesn't tell you that his wife found out, and you find out by other means. This reveals that he did not even consider you worthy of a warning, an explanation, a farewell. You simply cease to exist in his life overnight, and if you can't understand why, that's your problem. This situation also exposes the truth about all the speeches he made about marriage. If he was really unhappy, if he really wanted to leave, if he really saw you as something more than an adventure, the discovery of his wife would be an opportunity to finally resolve the situation. But in most cases, the opposite happens. He throws himself into his wife's arms, begs forgiveness, promises never to cheat again, and you realize that everything he said about marriage was a lie. The way he describes the discovery is also revealing. If he puts all the blame on you, that you were too pushy, texted too much, wasn't discreet enough, he's shifting responsibility for the situation, as if you pushed the envelope and caused the problem, ignoring the fact that he was the one who decided to start and maintain an extramarital relationship. After discovery, he will often try to return eventually when things calm down at home. He will send a message saying that he misses you, that he was forced to move away but that he still thinks about you. that the situation is difficult, but that may be in the future. This attempt to keep you as a backup option is perhaps the most selfish act of all, because it shows that even after everything, he still thinks he can use you at his convenience. 8. What these words really mean. All of these phrases, when viewed together, tell a story of manipulation, selfishness, and emotional cowardice. They are not honest expressions of mixed feelings or complicated situations. They are carefully selected tools to control the narrative, minimize his responsibility, and ensure that he comes out of the situation with the least possible damage to his self-image and his established life. What these words really reveal is that you were never a real priority. It was a distraction, an escape, something that served a temporary purpose in his life. There may have been genuine feelings at some point, but those feelings were never strong enough to motivate concrete change. They were never more important than the comfort, stability, or appearance of the life he had already built. These phrases also expose the deep disconnect between what he said and what he really felt. Words are easy. Real commitments, difficult choices, true sacrifices. These are the things that reveal a person's character. And a man who uses these phrases is showing that he prefers beautiful words to courageous actions. He prefers to keep you in his comfort zone than face the consequences of his own choices. The pattern of behavior behind these words is always the same. Avoid responsibility. He doesn't want to be the villain of the story. You want to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and believe that you're a good person who has been caught up in difficult circumstances. So he builds excuses, justifications, alternative narratives that absolve him of guilt. And she expects you to accept these narratives because to question would be to admit that you have been deceived. There is also a power dynamic in these phrases. He always keeps control of the situation. He is the one who decides when to reveal, what to reveal, how to reveal. It is he who sets the terms of separation, continuity, or whatever comes after. You are in a position to react to his decisions, never to make your own decisions based on complete and honest information. What these words ultimately mean is that you deserve much more than someone who can only relate through half-truths and strategic omissions. It deserves someone who doesn't need a repertoire of excuses because it's being genuine from the start. Someone who is not afraid of their own choices and their consequences. Someone who sees you as a priority, not a problem. The most important lesson these words teach is not about married men specifically. It's about recognizing patterns of manipulative behavior in any kind of relationship. It's about trusting your gut when something seems wrong, even if you can't prove it. It's about valuing your own emotional needs as much as you value the explanations and justifications you receive. When you finally understand what these words really mean, something transforms. The fog dissipates. Excuses lose their power, and you realize that the problem was never that you weren't enough, you didn't do enough, you didn't understand his situation. The problem was always that you were trying to build something real with someone who could only offer illusions. And this realization, as painful as it is also liberating. Because finally you can stop blaming yourself and start rebuilding yourself.